Hey guys, Mitch again. A little progress report on that tube amp kit I built. For those of you who remember, a few weeks ago, I completed construction on this little guy. It's a little 5-watt tube kit. And one thing I wasn't happy with was the amount of noise coming out of it. Even at a volume level of about 2, there was just a lot of hum coming through the speakers. So I went on a little mission to clean it up. I also added a few other features that I wanted in the amp. One of the differences, or primary difference you might see if you look at the old video, was the addition of this little guy. This here is a choke. What it basically is just a very large coil, and you might think it looks like a transformer. It pretty much is. It's very similar in construction to a transformer. However, instead of 2 sides, it just has 1 side. It's just a big coil. And I also, on the inside, I tripled the capacitance, the electrolytic capacitors for the filter. I went ahead and added some fairly large caps to what was already existing, and along with the coil it filtered the DC fairly well. I mean, it cleaned it up quite a bit, but that wasn't enough to get rid of the noise. In fact, it hardly made any change at all. So I had to investigate and find out where that noise was coming from. It was coming from somewhere else, obviously. And after hours and hours, I finally figured it out. It was coming from the heater circuit. Now here's the EL84, this is the power tube, and the 12AX7 preamp tube is inside here. The heaters on these are powered by a AC voltage. It's basically like a little toaster. And the problem I have is sometimes that AC current creates a little bit of a hum that gets into the signal chain, and it amplifies it, and that's what you hear in the speaker as noise. So I made some changes to the circuit. I basically changed the designer's original design from what was a DC elevated filament current. I'm not going to get into that, but what I did is I added an artificial center tap. I think a much better way of dealing with that. And you can see right here, all I did is I added a little potentiometer on the back, and all that does is that just lets me basically dial or adjust make a small adjustment and try and find a point where the noise is minimum. It'll be higher to either extreme, but somewhere in the middle it's usually fairly quiet. So the other changes I made were added a standby switch. Right now it's on, which means it's heating, but the high DC is off, so there's no sound coming out of it at all. Skip those switches for a second. This here used to be the old bass control knob. And I thought bass and treble controls were kind of nice, but a little overkill on such a small amp. And what I really wanted was a master volume. I wanted to be able to turn up the volume and get a little bit more breakup from the preamp tube without blasting this thing at a full 5 watts. So the old volume knob became basically the gain knob, because that's what it is. It controls the input into the second stage of the preamp tube. The treble I left just the same, just the way it was. I didn't touch that. The old bass knob is now the master volume knob. This controls the input going into the power tube. And then just to give me a little bit more flexibility, I added some switches, mid cut and bass cut, and this just cuts some of the frequencies out. So what I'm going to do is demonstrate to you how it sounds now. If you listen to the old video, you'll hear a lot of noise with the volume on the thing. Right now it's up pretty good. The gain's fairly high. The master volume's at 2. And I'm going to move the speaker around a little bit with the microphone. And you can hear there's hardly any hum coming out of this thing now. It's pretty quiet. This is even with the guitar plugged in and no one touching the strings or grounding it. I'm going to move that potentiometer in the back a little bit just so you can hear the effect it has. It hums up and it turns to the other extreme. And you hear just by going back and forth how the hum changes. So I just adjust it until it's about minimum, roughly in the middle. And now I know you guys want to hear what it sounds like. I just got my beater jacks in here, just set to the humbucker pickup. And I'm just going to play some nonsense for you.